Danganronpa. The fuck is that? Well, simply put, Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc was a murder mystery visual novel released in 2010 for the PSP. This game blew up from critical acclaim, and today the series has grown into a franchise that has games, manga, anime, and t-shirts. The franchise has made a pretty big impact in the Western market too. I mean, if you live anywhere near a Hot Topic, there's a pretty good chance you'll recognize this black and white bear. But I'll talk about that later. In short, Danganronpa is an anime-killing franchise that has become much more than it led on to be. The story takes place at Hope's Peak Academy, a private institution that cultivates talent among high schoolers. Hope's Peak raises the next generation of leaders, and is world renowned for being the very symbol of hope. So, to society, the students are basically hope incarnate. The student body consists of students who have been scouted for their exceptional talent. You got Swimmer Girl, Fighter Girl, Pop Idol Girl, and this guy, we don't talk about him. What I'm saying is, there isn't a single student in this school that doesn't have talent.
No, that's wrong!
The player plays as high school freshman Makoto Naegi, a friendly and gung-ho short teen that was chosen to attend Hope's Peak through random draw. Makoto falls unconscious, and when he wakes, he discovers that he'd been trapped inside the school with his 15 classmates. Now that doesn't sound too bad, until they find out that they're being forced into a mass killing game by their headmaster, Monokuma. The way this killing game works is that the students are all trapped inside the school. In order to escape, the students will have to kill one another. And after each murder, the remaining survivors will participate in a class trial to determine who done it. If the culprit's identity is found during the trial, then they alone will get executed, and the killing game will continue. But if the culprit manages to avoid getting caught, they alone will get to leave the academy at the cost of the remaining students' lives who are executed in their place. While every murder is its own mystery to solve, there's also the mystery behind the killing game itself that needs to be put together by the player. While this aspect is the biggest draw to the game, there are many gameplay mechanics that work together to create a conclusive experience. I want to examine the workings of the game as a whole and analyze how the designers created the Danganronpa Experience. Earlier, I described Danganronpa as a visual novel. While this is technically true, Danganronpa is more so a murder mystery experience that consists of elements from visual novels, puzzle games, and third-person shooters. The game is split into different segments, each with varying gameplay: free time, investigation, and class trials. Each segment works together to create a compelling experience driven by a cohesive story. Free time follows the visual novel format where players will choose which of their classmates to spend their time with and grow closer to. These characters grow on the player the more time you spend with them, and you really start to feel sorry for everyone caught up in this situation. During this segment is also when most plot events occur. The plot is linear, but there are many incentives for the player to stay engaged during free time. Getting closer to your classmates will unlock skills for you to use during the class trials later on, and obtaining specific items can unlock hidden events. But if you're like me, you'll just skip through these segments as fast as you can to get to the juicy bits, because the biggest appeal during these segments are the developments on solving the big mystery behind the school. Over time, new areas of the map will unlock, and more clues will be introduced. These developments feed the player's curiosity, but as the plot advances, the tension rises, and inevitably, tragedy will strike. after a murder has occurred, the investigation segment will begin. The investigation begins when 3 or more students find a dead body. Discovering a dead body is always a sudden and shocking experience. I mean, the cinematography when the bodies are presented to the player use elements that perfectly represents feelings of terror of finding a corpse. Every student has equal footing in the killing game, so it's always possible for your favorite character to get killed. During free time, the developers also repeatedly and intentionally insert situations that mislead the player to keep things unpredictable. Players experienced in the mystery genre would typically pick up on plot lines that could indicate a character's death, but the designers put a bunch of fake situations in the mix. The murder scenarios are crafted incredibly well. All of the murders are typically out of the box due to the murderers needing to successfully avoid punishment during the trial. You can tell that the writers seriously put a lot of time and effort into each scenario, and how they affected the plot as a whole. Depending on which student gets killed, the group dynamic of the survivors can completely shift and change the atmosphere. Now, the scenarios are great in this game, but in the later games in the series, these scenarios are on a completely different level. Case 1 in Danganronpa 3 absolutely gave me chills. During the investigation, players examine the crime scenes to gather evidence and witness testimonies. Each evidence gathered becomes a truth bullet that can be used during class trials. Since it's life or death, each class trial has a great value of importance to the survivors, so the investigation feels like a critical moment. Unfortunately, the gameplay does not reflect this tension, as the class trial will not begin unless certain flags have been met. There are changes that could resolve this that I will get into later, but for now, let's talk about the cream of the Danganronpa crop, the class trials. The class trials were designed with the intent of representing a debate with gameplay mechanics, and holy fuck does it work so well. The students converse over the details of the crime in order to collectively find the culprit. As this happens, the dialogue drifts across the screen in text form. The player's objective is to use their truth bullets to either refute or consent the student's claims. This is done by shooting the correct statement with the correct truth bullet. In the case the player uses either the wrong bullet or shoots the wrong statement, your classmates' trust in you is lowered. If their trust reaches 0, they will vote for you as the culprit. Even if the real culprit is on the ropes, or if you have an irrefutable alibi. When the trust meter reaches 0, the same cutscene plays no matter what the context is, and it really breaks the immersion. Anyways, as the player survives class trials, more elements are thrown into the mix. White noise will block your bullets. Bullet time battles and Hangman's Gambit add variety, and the amount of truth bullets you have increases. The real-time aspect of the debate adds urgency to gameplay, and helps solidify the feeling of debate. Other logic games of a similar style give the player ample time to pick apart a case, but because of the urgency and the player's life at stake, Danganronpa is a more thrilling experience. Free time, investigations, and class trials. Each segment of Danganronpa is tailored for a linear experience with a cohesive story. There are no branching paths, and the victims are always the same, and the majority of the choices the player makes does not affect the overall plot. One might see this as a bad choice on the designer's part, but I beg to differ. These gameplay segments are tailored to the target audience elegantly. This audience being, in broad terms, mystery novel fans. Mystery novels are about experiencing a well-planned mystery, but if branched paths were included into Danganronpa, the story would no longer be cohesive. The plot would become player-driven, watered down. Now, a Danganronpa experience with branched paths is also a compelling concept, but there would be a number of changes to be made for such a concept to work. I don't want to get too deep into that, so just take away that the goal was not to have a player-driven narrative, but to appeal to mystery fans with a cohesive story. Each segment serves a purpose that appeals to this audience. Free time increases the player's investment into the characters and the story. Investigation challenges the player with an unorthodox mystery and incites drama. And the class trials challenge the player with logic puzzles and reward them with resolution and plot development.